Today we'll be taking a look at Street Fighter V on the PS4 and the Potato Masher. If you don't know, the Potato Masher is a $375 PC custom built in 2014 and designed to compete with the PS4 for the rest of its life cycle. The goal is not to pick on consoles, but to show that PC gaming can be just as good or better for the same money. There are important links in the video description, so check them out. Let's get to it. For a fighting game, visuals and resolutions take a backseat to frame rate consistency. Like many fighting games, Street Fighter V is built around a steady 60 FPS. If the game runs slower on one machine, that player will miss valuable input frames and the game will physically appear to be moving slower. Likewise, while higher refresh rate monitors are supported, the game may not run above 60 rendered frames per second. So a steady 60 FPS is important. Both the Masher and the PS4 run the game at 60 FPS without much trouble. The Masher is capable of doing this with every graphics setting maxed out, although I turned anti-aliasing down to medium. Not for the performance bump, but because on high or very high settings, the anti-aliasing smears some of the textures and makes the game look worse, in my opinion. Here you can see the difference. This method of AA is good at getting rid of jaggies, but bad at preserving detail. Even with medium AA, the Masher does look better than the PS4. While both platforms are close, the Masher has sharper textures and a little more refinement in the character models. The PS4's only glaring flaw is a Mora effect on the shadows. It's not uncommon for the PS4 to utilize lower resolution shadow maps depending on the game, but this is more noticeable than usual and it's pretty distracting. There appears to be a screen door effect moving across players, and you'll notice it whether standing still or fighting. This seems somewhat short-sighted in my opinion, and I would have preferred another area of the game's visuals to be scaled down so the shadows could be a little better. And while the Masher does look slightly better overall, the PC version feels like somewhat of a rushed port. If you want to change resolutions, the game makes you click through them one at a time while it changes the resolution each time. There's no apply button that it waits for, it just starts changing it. Same thing for the resolution scaling. You guys know I'm a fan of resolution scaling, but not when you can only change it 1% at a time and the game changes the res scale every time you click the button. This feels amateurish and was a bit frustrating for testing. However, once you get your settings worked out, you shouldn't need to go back into that menu much, and the rest of the game works quite well. I don't know how either platform performed at launch, but both of them run the game well now. On medium settings and at 1440p, the Masher has trouble maintaining 60 FPS. There were several matches where I had a smooth frame rate the entire time, and then a few others where it started to dip and then crash into the 30s. Since the frame rate is so important, I lowered the settings to low and then there were no issues. That's a little easier to do on a game like this that has a cartoonish art style. Low and medium are not immediately distinguishable, and low doesn't look significantly worse than high. 4K was a different story. On very low settings, I had to lower the resolution scale to 50% to maintain a steady 60. Granted, that's still a higher rendered resolution than 1080p, but the settings were so low that the game ended up looking worse. While the PC version has a few rough edges in the menus, everything is great once you hop into a match. The PS4 works well everywhere and only has the rough shadow maps as a real downside. I'd recommend either platform depending on your preferred control scheme and available hardware. The Potato Masher delivers a slightly better experience based on my preferences, so I'm giving it the win, but just barely. You really can't go wrong with either. I rarely throw in opinions on gameplay or game design since these are graphics tests. However, I was a little surprised and disappointed by many of the racial stereotypes and sexist depictions of both genders in many of the background and playable characters. I'm a big defender of a creator's right to make art the way they want, but some of Street Fighter's design decisions seem to be based in ignorance and cheap thrills rather than a compelling narrative or intentional provocation. If you enjoyed this video, check out the original build video or any of the other Potato Masher videos linked on screen. This project was started by the Casual Shenanigans Gaming Podcast, so click the link to check us out. You can support this channel and the Potato Masher project by tossing me a few bucks on Patreon. It helps me test new games quicker and better, and I picked up a crap ton of stuff in the Steam sale with you guys' Patreon money, and I'm looking forward to making a bunch more tests for you soon. So thank you all for your support, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.